Good day, everyone. Today, I'll be taking you through an in-depth look at the demographics of indigenous peoples, or IPs, in southern Philippines. This isn't just about statistics. It's about understanding the people, their cultures, and the challenges they face in today's world. Before we dive into the details, let's take a look at the structure of my report through the table of contents. Mindanao, the second largest island in the Philippines, is home to a rich diversity of indigenous people. This southern part of the archipelago is marked by stunning geography, surrounded by the Bohol, Celebes, Sulusis, and dotted with major peninsulas and bays. But it's not just the landscape that's diverse. Mindanao's indigenous population represents a vibrant cultural tapestry. Today, we'll explore their demographic details and the significance of studying their communities. Population distribution of IPs in the Philippines. Now, onto some key data points. According to the National Commission on Indigenous People, or NCIP, from 2020, indigenous people make up about 9.1% of the Philippine household population. That's approximately 15.56 million individuals. What's interesting is how this population is distributed across the country. The 8.21 million, or 7.6%, are the indigenous people identified by National Commission on Indigenous People, or NCIP. The other one are the Muslim tribes identified by National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, or NCMF, with 5.48 million, or 5%. Next, IPs and Muslim tribes identified by both NCIP and NCMF, with 1.63 million persons, or 1.5%. And foreign ethnicities with 230,117 individuals, or 0.2%. Southern Philippines, particularly Mindanao, holds the majority. In fact, about 61% of the IP population resides here in Mindanao, making it a significant region when we talk about indigenous issues. When we zoom in a bit, we see that each region within Mindanao is home to specific indigenous groups. For example, the Davao region is known for the Bagobo, Mandaya, and Mansaka peoples. Meanwhile, in northern Mindanao, you'll find the Higaonon and Talaande. Each group has its own unique customs, traditions, and challenges. This diversity within the indigenous population is crucial to understand when designing policies that affect them. Let's take a moment to look at the ethnic composition of the indigenous peoples in Mindanao. The Subanen tribe, with approximately 758,499 individuals, make up the largest group. They are followed by the Manobo tribe with around 644,900. Next is the Mandaya tribe at 523,475, and the Tiboli tribe with 453,000 individuals. Then, the Bilaan tribe with approximately 450 individuals. Next is the Higaonon tribe with around 350,000 individuals. And lastly is the Teduray tribe with at least 200 individuals. These communities are not just statistics. They represent vibrant cultures with deep historical roots in the region. Socioeconomic status of IPs in southern Philippines, particularly in Mindanao. Unfortunately, many indigenous communities face significant challenges. Poverty rates are high, access to health care and education remains limited, and employment opportunities are often scarce. These socioeconomic issues create barriers that can prevent IPs from fully participating in society. It's crucial to address these disparities if we want to create a more inclusive and equitable future for indigenous peoples. Alright, let's dive into something really important when it comes to indigenous peoples in the Philippines, their ancestral domains. Now, when we talk about these domains, we're not just talking about the land in the sense of owning property like having a backyard or a farm. No, for indigenous peoples, these lands are so much more than that. What are ancestral domains? Ancestral domains are lands, waters, and natural resources that IPs have traditionally owned, lived on, and used. These are places where their ancestors lived, where their traditions were born, and where their culture continues to thrive today. So, for them, it's not just about territory, it's about a deep connection to the land that goes back generations. You might be wondering, how are these domains protected? Well, back in 1997, the Philippines passed the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, or APRA. This was a huge step forward because it legally recognizes and protects the ancestral domains of IPs. Basically, this law gives indigenous communities the right to claim their traditional lands and protect them from outside pressures. But here's the tricky part. Just because it's recognized by law doesn't mean it's easy for them to secure these lands. In fact, the process of obtaining land titles can be really slow and bogged down by bureaucracy. On top of that, there are external pressures from industries like mining, logging, and agriculture. These industries see the land as a resource, but for IPs, so much more than that. It's their home, their heritage, and often a sacred place. And here's what really sets ancestral domains apart. It's not just about economics or having land to farm. For many indigenous groups, their lands has deep spiritual meaning. It's where they hold their rituals, where their ancestors are buried, and where they maintain their cultural practices. Losing these lands isn't just a material loss, it's losing a part of who they are. Alright, now let's talk about something really fascinating: the cultural practices and traditions of indigenous peoples in southern Philippines. This is honestly one of my favorite parts because the depth of these traditions is just amazing. First up, the Maguindanaoan people. Now, their belief system is centered around what we call animism. It's this idea that spirit and ancestors play a big role in their daily lives, and even nature has a kind of spiritual essence. They see the world in a way that connects them deeply to their surroundings. Imagine looking at a tree or a river and believing it has its own spirit. This practice keeps them in tune with nature and their community. Next, we have the Tivoli people. I have to say, the religious traditions are just beautiful. They believe in gods and spirits, like the sun god and moon god, and the rituals are a big deal. Picture this: you have ceremonies that involve singing, dancing, and making offerings to these deities. It's like a festival where every movement and song has meaning, connecting them to their gods and ancestors. It's a vibrant and lively expression of their culture. Now, the Manobo tribe. Their belief system is really complex, but at the heart of it is a supreme being and respect for ancestral spirits. What's interesting here is how the Manobo use storytelling and music in their religious rituals. It's not just about praying or making offerings, it's also about keeping their history and stories alive through rituals. It's their way of honoring those who came before them, while also staying connected to their spirituality. Finally, we have the Sobanen tribe. Their religion is deeply animistic as well, meaning they believe everything in nature has a spiritual essence. What I love about their traditions is how everything is interconnected. It's not just about worshiping gods, but also respecting the environment, because for them, it's all part of spiritual balance. They see nature as not just a resource, but something to honor and protect. Imagine living your life with that kind of respect for every tree, river, and mountain. So, what's really cool here is that all these groups, though they have different belief systems, share this deep connection with nature, with their ancestors, and their land. These traditions aren't just rituals, they are ways of life that shape their identity and community. I think it's something we can all learn from. This idea that we're part of something bigger and that honoring the past and our environment can be deeply spiritual. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears and talk about something super important, the policies that are in place to protect the rights of indigenous peoples here in the Philippines. It's one thing to recognize their culture, but without legal protection, a lot of these communities wouldn't have the rights they deserve. For historical context, before the 1980s, IPs really didn't have much legal recognition when it came to their lands and resources. But things started to change in the 1980s when the government introduced long-term stewardship agreements. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction, basically giving IPs some say over managing the forests and lands they lived on. Now, fast forward to 1997 and we get something really groundbreaking, the Indigenous Peoples' Right Act or IPRA. This law is a game changer for indigenous peoples. For the first time, it recognized their ownership of ancestral domains, meaning the lands, water, and resources they've used for generations. It's not just about giving them a piece of paper, it's about acknowledging their deep connections to these lands. This includes not only physical ownership but also spiritual and cultural ties. Here's another cool part of IPRA. It gives what's called tenurial security. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying that these communities have long-term rights over their land. They're issued certificates of ancestral domain titles or CIDTs or certificates of ancestral land titles or CALTs, which are legal documents that back up their ownership. It's a pretty big deal because it moves beyond temporary agreement and into full ownership rights. Here's the thing. Passing a law is one thing, making it work on the ground is another. IPRA didn't just stop at recognizing rights. It created a legal framework that ensures IPs can actively claim those rights. This goes beyond just contracts or agreements. It's about real ownership, real legal recognition, and long-term security. On top of that, there are organizations actively working to support IP rights like CAMP and the NCIPP. These groups do a lot from advocacy work to promoting cultural preservation. They are out there on the ground helping IP communities navigate the legal system, secure their land titles, and protect their rights. In summary, the indigenous peoples of southern Philippines are a diverse and vibrant population, but they face significant challenges. From land rights to economic marginalization, these communities need continued support from both the government and the NGOs to protect their culture, improve their livelihoods, and secure their future. By understanding their demographics, we can take the first step toward creating a better future for them.